the additional people, because we don't even look like African people. That's right. You can get the blackest, you can get Project Black out the project, the blackest nigga in the project, and get an African, the blackest African, you can tell which one is which. We just don't look like them. Period.
When I was reading to prepare for this interview, I was quite surprised to see you use the word Aborigines talking about African Americans.
You know, I've dealt with that issue.
It had described Pocahontas' people as being indigenous black people, according to his own historical.
Darker skinned Indians with straighter hair.
Still sitting around smoking bud, talking shit. Same thing the natives used to do.
Kiyamas of Guyana, brown Negroes like Hottentot.
They enslaved pretty much everyone in Haiti. They sent about 2,000.
I've made very, very clear I don't know where that comment comes from.
Well, from your subconscious.
You ain't been enslaved that long. When I say you, I mean the people, the Native Americans from 1492 to current day, which would be us. That's not a lot of time. We're still not used to this just from spirit. It takes a long time to wash a person's heritage away. Even if you brainwash them to not know who they are. The heritage is encoded in the DNA. We still do the same thing the natives used to do. The dances, all of that. We still doing the same things. We still sitting around smoking bud, talking shit. Same thing the natives used to do. Nothing's really different. It's a deep thing y'all have to grasp. You still got the same spirit as those people. You still a knucklehead like those people. You still don't want to go with the white man's law like them people. It's a deep thing. If you look at the natives then and you look at black people now, Haitians, Dominicans, I mean all the people of America, we ain't changed them. We still beefing amongst each other, and we still got a problem with this white man's law. And that was the same thing going on in the past. We didn't get along with each other, and we didn't like their laws. That's why we lived free. We lived by universal law, give and receive, things like this. Yeah, we were beefing amongst each other, but no one was selling slaves and all this weird, stupid stuff.
In 1543, Hernandez de Soto and his Spanish Conquistador army was met by a large nation of black Indians in North Louisiana near Monroe and the Ouachita River, as the Spanish was trying to colonize Louisiana, Arkansas, Mississippi, and the entire Gulf Coast. And that's just in North Louisiana that there was a whole bunch of black Indians. And that passage is found in the primitive black nations of America. And prior to Hernandez de Soto coming to Louisiana to colonize the Gulf Coast, he had arrived in Florida, off the coast of Florida, and automatically started warring with the Florida Indians, who was giving them hell the whole time. And de Soto had described the Florida Indians that he was at war with as being very large black Indians in an aspect different from those from the interior of North America because of the climate that they lived in. Because of the humid sun that they lived in, their complexion was very dark-skinned and they had woolly hair. And that passage is found in the history of Hernandez de Soto by Bernard Shipp, Louisiana and southern Mississippi, where all the black Indians who were in large numbers in southern Louisiana and Mississippi, they were captured into slavery, forced into assimilation in the colonies, and they ended up having their identity reclassified and changed, from indigenous to Negro, black, and colored, and now African American today. All across southern Louisiana and southern Mississippi, there were large black Indian nations like the Choctaw Indians, the Chittimachas, the Tunicas. The Choctaw Nation, Choctaw Indians had dozens of tribes like the Bayagula, the Colapisa, Chabatulas, Nugalatia, Pascagoula, all throughout southern Louisiana, New Orleans, Baton Rouge, Alexandria, Lake Charles, Homer, Pearl River, past Kristen, Gulfport, Biloxi. That was all black Indian territory. That was all Shafunka Nation territory, who still exists today and are the direct descendants of the Choctaw Indians that were met by Bienville and Iberville in 1699. You hear me? We still exist today in New Orleans on the other side of the lake in Lake Pontchartrain as far as the nation's seat or the village of the nation still exists in Slidell and Bonfilter, Louisiana. You hear me? So all of the earliest European explorers on the entire Atlantic Gulf Coast, they met indigenous Americans who were phenotypically misnomer black people, according to the European explorers' own voyage accounts.
Africa does not create dark skin and have a pattern on dark skin. It's the position of the equator. The sun gives you melanin, gives you dark skin. And, you know, the people in North America live in a more forest environment. You know, the weather is balanced. It goes through pole shifts and, you know, seasonal changes. So, you know, it's a period in North America when we are just basically in the sun, and it's a period when we are out the sun. And that plays a part in skin color and hair texture and everything, because if you look at the people in Africa, they live in a more tropical environment, a more desertish environment. They're in the heat all year. So, you know, that America, if you look at this map, and you look at this map of North America, just for start, you see the southern part of that's the darkest. Look at the southern part of the United States. You see it's red, and you see most of it is yellow. And then you go further up to Canada, it's blue. Then if you see the darkest part is really in California, like on the southwest. And then as you go down, you get more into a red zone. You look at South America, Central America, you know. And then you go across Africa, the same thing. So a lot of people can't, you know, they can't understand that. So I ask anybody to use their common sense. You're going to tell me that the indigenous people of this country had light skin, straight hair, pale skin, in these hot, humid, like Florida. That's where you might see the darkest people in this country are going to be in Florida, California, because they're in they're in the heat all year long. And, you know, you can't tell me the indigenous people of this country, especially in the southeast, in the southwest, the Caribbean, Mexico, had pale skin, stringy hair, because those climates do not produce that. If anybody been to Florida, you know everybody in Florida is dark. So you're in that humidity that plays a part. 500 nations. It shows the indigenous people of Hispaniola, and you can see that. So common sense has not, you know, a lot of people have been dumbed down. And if you go to Africa, the lightest Africans that you will see live in a more forest kind of environment. You go to South Africa, the people are more, they are lighter, they have, you know, like the hair is kinky, they are lighter skinned, the eyes are more slanted because that is the environment. They live in a more forest, is similar to North America. South Africa I'm talking about. Then you go to West Africa, it's more of a tropical environment. So I would say West Africa is more similar to like somewhere in Florida. You know, further North America, you'll see darker skinned Indians with straighter hair. You look at the old pictures of the Algonquin, the Narragansett people. You can see the thickness, but the straightness. So you look at the people in North America, so-called black people, they're more copper-colored, copper-skinned people. They have a balanced complexion because they live in that forest-like environment, whereas the people in Africa are living in a more tropical environment. That's very important to know. Non-indigenous people are the product of the Neanderthal people crossbreeding and mixing with the word indigenous comes from the word indigo, Indi, darkest color in this spectrum. That's what the word Indi means, dark pigment. If you go to if the darkest people in the world are in India, those are the darkest people in the world, India. Present day India was originally called Hindustan. So when Columbus came to America and called the people Indians, That's who we are. We are the dark-skinned Aborigine people that, you know, these Spanish conquistadors seen when they came to this country.
After, we'll call it the Arawak Chronicles, what happened in the past, or the Taino Chronicles. After they enslaved pretty much everyone in Haiti, they sent about 2,000 slaves back to Spain. They were sending slaves back and forth from America to all over the place, to Africa, to Spain, to different parts of America. It was crazy. They rounded up a whole bunch of indigenous Arawak slaves over in Central America, and they shipped them over to Haiti to work. They also grabbed a great many slaves. Some say they cleared the island of Nassau of all the inhabitants to bring them to work in Haiti. They would tell you that all these people died, but my question is, where are all the mass graves for these people? You know, and a lot of these descriptions of these people, they were described to be black. A lot of the cases, a lot of people will argue that they weren't, but they were. It is what it is. A lot of time, these people were described as black. There were black people witnessed in Haiti. So right off the bat, that tells you the regular history that you're given, you're lied to about, and that you are tied to these very lands. That's why they lied to you about it in the first place.
Ex-Micah, Taino words. Taino is black. We're not Indians. We might appear as such, but we're not. Just to clarify something, there are no Indian bones that was found in Jamaica. No 10,000 BC Indian bones. There's no anthropology, archaeological or otherwise, that can prove that there are any other presence on this land but of the dark-skinned Taino joined by our African brothers. These are the actual facts. They might not be in your textbooks, or they might not be progenited in your university curriculums and such, but so be it.
Ancient Mayans liked to decorate their teeth with gems to frighten their enemies and beautify themselves, a practice which is popular today as well. We call it tooth jewelry. Ancient Mayans liked to decorate their teeth with gems to frighten their enemies and beautify themselves, a practice which is popular today as well. We call it tooth jewelry, a dental procedure in which small gems are attached to the teeth. As we can see, the technique looks quite similar to what we do today.
Roamed free in North America before Christopher Columbus and the early explorers came, and they saw these massive creatures in the wild, and these guys who were hunting people, and they started killing them off every time they seen them. So the numbers here in the United States are super low, but in Central and South America the numbers are a little bit higher. You can find them through Mexico as well too. They have super sharp claws. Come on, baby. Come. 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 Come.
Handle something like a round and very large fly fan with a look at this, with a what? A cross similar to that of the Knights of the Order of St. John of Rhodes. Ha! What are they doing with that cross? Silly, the cross is Powhatan. It represents the solstices. All right? The Powhatan was not the name of a tribe. It was the name of the annual celebrations that took place at the equinoxes and solstices, which is, again, the basis of the Toon calendar. I can walk you through this easily. All right? In the middle of a black field, and the cross was white. These are Aboriginal Americans with the symbol. With the first Europeans coming to see them, they already had the symbol. How did they get it? And although the governor entered the plaza and alighted from his horse and went up to him, he did not rise, but remained passive in perfect composure and as if he had been a king. All right, so you got that source. All right, the DeSoto Chronicles are a primary source. All right.
When Giovanni de Verrazzano was exploring the Atlantic coast from Carolina up into the New York area, he had wrote a letter to Francis I, the King of France, in 1524, describing the Carolina Indians as being dark in color, not unlike the Ethiopians. Giovanni de Verrazzano had described the Carolina Indians as exactly resembling the Ethiopians, and also in Beaufort, South Carolina, the Spanish explorer or Spanish colonizer Lucas Vasquez de Ayllon had came in contact with the Yamasee Indians in 1520. And he described the Yamasee as being Negroes being valuable in labor. So as soon as Vasquez de Ayllon had pulled up to the Atlantic and Carolina, he was trying to enslave the Yamasee Indians, who he had described as being Negroes, the same Yamasee Indians that we see existing today in Allendale, South Carolina. That's the ancestors of today's Yamasee Indians. When William Penn came to New Jersey, the same William Penn that Pennsylvania, Penn State, and Penn University is named after, the same William Penn that's on the Quakers grist box here. I mean, when he came in contact with the Lenape Indians in 1683, William Penn described the Lenapes as being a complexion black, but by design like the Gypsies in England, is how William Penn described the Lenapes, who's also known as the Delaware. You know, I mean, that's in the Northeast region around New Jersey, Delaware, and the Lenape still exist there today in that same region in New Jersey and Delaware. Plains natives or Mongoloids did not live in the Southeast, the Northeast, or California or the Pacific historically. The only area that the Plains or Mongoloid-looking natives lived was the Northwest and the Southwest, and they only got to the Southwest in Arizona and New Mexico and Colorado because they moved down, they migrated from the Northwest in Montana, Dakota, in Idaho and Washington. That's the only area that the Mongoloids or Plains people historically live. They are migrational people, so-called Black Americans or autochthonous. We originated from the soil of the earth. The soil of North America is where misnamed, reclassified Black Americans originated from. So historically, the only people that lived in the Southeast and the Northeast and the West Coast were so-called black people, indigenous people that look like so-called black people according to the Europeans' earliest historical documented accounts. There were no Plains or Mongoloids on the East Coast, the Southeast, or the West Coast, ever. They only lived in the Northwest, the Mongoloids. The Mongoloids only lived in the Northwest. Mongoloids never lived in the Southeast, in Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, the Carolinas, Virginia, Carolina, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, California, Texas. Mongoloids never lived in none of those places. That was only indigenous, misnamed black people. Mongoloids only lived in the Northwest. In Virginia, well over a decade before the first imported Negroes were shipped into Jamestown, Virginia from the Caribbean in 1619, John Smith in 1607 had encountered the Powhatan Nation and described them as being so-called misnomer black people. The same John Smith that we've seen in the Pocahontas movie. John Smith had described Pocahontas' people as being indigenous black people, according to his own historical voyage accounts. John Smith, when he was at war with the Powhatan Indians, he described the Powhatan Algonquin chief as being more like a devil than a man, with some 200 more as black as himself. And the Algonquins were the Powhatans, the Narragansetts, and the Wampanoag. They live all up and down the Atlantic eastern seaboard, from Massachusetts and Rhode Island to Virginia and the Carolinas. That was all Algonquin territory, and they looked like exactly how the Narragansett people look today and how the Wampanoag people look today. That's all the same people.
The ancient code of Haiti, Haiti, represented a nation of beasts. This is what he referred to them as beasts by the historical songs. Whose historical songs? The Albion's historical songs. So, he's saying that the indigenous people of Haiti were black, which we know that they are predominantly so-called black now. California of the Carib Islands, called Black Caribs or the Guyanese by others. There was what? So-called Black Carib. And they was what's called the Califanami. Or the Califanams. You have the Okoro of Hutara, mentioned by Garcia in the West Indies. He said they're quite black. The Auroras of Raleigh, or Auroras of the Spaniards, ugly black or brown Negroes, yet existing near the Orinoco, and language known called monkey by their neighbors. Kayamas of Guyana, brown Negroes like Hottentots. You had the Manjapas of Parsigis of the Nayahof, and the Matayas of Kniv, of Kedves, or all of Brazil, black, right? He's saying that they, well, he said they here, brown Negroes with curly hair. So all of these people was in Brazil, obviously before the slave trade, brown and red Negroes who was already in these areas, in California, in Florida, Georgia.
That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being a Mongoloid.